Hello, I'm Jim Forstner, the CEO of Emory Hillendale, Emory Decatur, and Emory Long-Term Acute Care Hospitals. I want to thank House of Hope and Pastor Sharice Cross for allowing us to bring this important health information to you through the Hope TV platform. As we continue to be challenged by COVID-19, it is incredibly comforting to know that ministries like House of Hope are supporting our community. I encourage you to keep your guard up by wearing masks, practicing hand hygiene, and avoiding large gatherings until such time as you and those around you are able to receive the vaccine. To learn more about the vaccine, I invite you to visit our website at www.emoryhealthcare.org/COVID-vaccines-FAQ.html. You can also find that right off our emoryhealthcare.org homepage. On behalf of our physicians and all of our staff, I want to thank you for doing your part to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Hello, welcome to Hope TV. I'm Kawanda Green, and this is Surviving and Thriving in a Pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us. Actually, welcome back. Last week, we talked to Dr. Andrea Dabney, an OBGYN at Emory Healthcare. We talked to her about women's health. And this week, we're going to talk about women's health. We talked about pap smears and women's cycles last week, and we really got into it. So I recommend you go back and watch part 1. Part 2, today we're going to talk about fibroids and menopause and among other things, but we're going to dive into it. So we're going to get right into it because Dr. Dabney has so much great information for us. Dr. Dabney, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, actually.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's a good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just like I said, last week we talked about the pap smear and our cycles, and we ended off talking about the heavy bleeding. And what I've heard when they bleed a lot, that fibroids might be an issue. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Fibroids happen to be one of the most common uterine masses. The uterus is the womb, or what holds a baby when you're pregnant. The fibroids are smooth muscle tissue growths. Now, what that means is the type of tissue that it is growing in that organ in the uterus is smooth muscle. Now, because of the character of it, we can see this tissue on imaging, such as an ultrasound. When we see these, it helps us measure them, and it helps us to learn more about ways to help young women, because some young women, unfortunately, make very large fibroids. Those fibroids can be difficult in that they can cause heavy bleeding, and for some women, infertility. And so it's really important because we can get imaging such as our ultrasound, our MRI or magnetic resonance imaging to look more at these lesions so that we can offer therapy or treatment. Now, for some women, they don't need treatment. I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
That's what I was going to ask you about treatments. But you continue and we'll get back to that.
Sure. And so when they come to us with a complaint of the heavy bleeding or abnormal bleeding or changes in their cycle. My cycle was every month, but now I'm noticing it's twice in a month, or I'm noticing it's longer than it used to be. What we do is imaging, and ultrasound is our best friend. It's one that we use to help look at the different um, textures and shadings of the image and the qualities in that image to tell us more about what's going on. Now, with fibroids, they have submucosal, subserosal, and intramural. That's where they are located on the uterus or inside the uterus. Depending on where they're located, helps us determine how we can treat a patient. Some women we offer medications to, and usually we try to use that as our guideline, knee jerk automatically because it's the least invasive thing for a patient. But there's a lot of caveats to that. If they are perimenopausal, if they are on the verge of 48 to 50 years old, they may say, look, I've had my children. I just want this bleeding to stop. And we understand that. So we move to more what we call definitive treatments. And usually that is a hysterectomy or removal of that uterus. Now, if the fibroids are in a young reproductive age woman that is interested in childbearing, that may or may not have started having children yet, we offer medications, but those medications put you into fake menopause. So it shuts the hormones down to stop the growth of the fibroid. So you can't get pregnant when you're in fake menopause. So that's not the right choice. So we have other things that we do, such as a myomectomy or removal of one or two fibroids. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. Imaging is great, but it's still technology that's going to continue to improve. And so sometimes the images don't show us all the fibroids that are actually there. And when we take you to surgery, it ends up being a lot more than what we had planned for initially. So a myomectomy is what we call uterine sparing, meaning the job is to keep that uterus because one, the patient wants her uterus. Two, the patient is interested in childbearing. And so we have to go through a lot of discussion around the needs of the patient and helping them to decrease sometimes just the bulk or the size of their uterus because they're in so much pain or pressure. Or the bleeding is so bad that we're using these measures to try to help with that.
Dr. Dabney, why are fibroids so high in African American women?
I will win the Nobel Peace Prize if I figure that one out. We are working so hard, but study-wise, we need more money funding to do more research. There are a lot of women's issues that don't get the deserved funding to learn more so that we can do better. But it's slowly getting better. We're making ground in it. I so wish I knew the magic bullet to fibroids because you are so right. It is what a large majority of my young women that have them are African American. and they can be so difficult. So we've got to figure that one out. We just don't know the answer yet.
One of my girlfriends, she has them, and her bleeding is just, when she was telling me about it, it was just unreal. Like I couldn't imagine it. But what she told me once she started her cycle and she went on this 7-day water fast, and her bleeding was the lightest it's ever been in her entire life. She didn't have any pain, and her bleeding, it was incredibly light. So I wonder if what we're eating has contributes to fibroids. Have you
That's
learned anything, heard anything?
the thing is, anecdotally, I have had many of my young women tell me when they change their diet, their bleeding improves significantly. Some of them have become vegan or vegetarian, and the changes in the diet they attribute it to. I can never say that that is not the case, because a healthier diet overall is going to make a healthier person. Now, the key is to figure out the link between what in the diet is actually the culprit. I would love to know which food, which protein, which fast food restaurant, yes, which sugar, is doing this, because there is something there. When women change their diets, I do see improvements in bleeding. I do see decreases in the size of their fibroids as we follow them over time. For some young women, they'll tell me, Dr. Dabney, I don't want those hormones. I don't want to use any of those old hormones and add nothing extra to my body. And I understand that. But you're right. There is something to the diet, and technology is going to get there, but we've got to get that funding. So that's going to be key.
It would be so awesome if, like, maybe some of your patients or, a group of women would just wean out a few things at a time so they can start eliminating, and they can get more information and they can share it with other women. That could benefit a lot of women. I think that would be a great idea.
I think that's a great idea. What happens usually is human nature. The things we cut out are those things that we enjoyed for different reasons, comfort foods, things that we're drawn to because they can become easily addictive, like the fried foods. And so it's hard to do something like that and sustain it.
We were talking about our last segment, we were talking about menopause. You mentioned perimenopause. I think there was 3 that you mentioned. Where were the other 2? Perimenopause, postmenopause, and I guess
and then the reproductive age. So that's our premenopausal women.
Okay. So what do they experience when they're going through premenopausal stage?
So premenopause is our young women that still are desirous of pregnancy, are usually having regular cycles. Perimenopause may be what we were just ending on. Maybe that was it, Kawanda. Perimenopause is our bodies are starting to transition into the change. So for some women, and it's hormonal, again, just like when we begin menarche, our first cycle, the hormones have changed. Well, now we have exhausted a lot of the eggs we talked about that were in the ovaries. And so we're not getting the signals that we need to continue to have these cycles anymore. So as we lose the signals to our brain, it goes to our uterus and we start having longer cycles. So you can have a 14-day cycle and then skip a month. You can have a 3-week cycle and then skip a month. Oh, it can be really tough. Some women stop bleeding and never bleed again. Some women have these heavier, longer cycles until 1 month they just don't bleed. They just drop a cycle. And then the cycle starts again. 1 month it'll be 7 days, the next month it'll be 14 days, the next month it'll be 21 days, and then the next month they'll drop a cycle. And they'll do that for a year or two. As their bodies are changing, they're losing the hormonal signal to have a cycle. And so the body doesn't know what to do with it. And it tries to figure out where to bleed, when to bleed. And so it can bleed all the time. And then all of a sudden there's no more lining left to bleed. And it's very thin and you just don't bleed. So you drop a cycle. And so perimenopause is this really crazy time where the cycles can be ridiculous, up and down, up and down. And some women don't tolerate that well. Most women wouldn't tolerate bleeding and bleeding and bleeding for weeks. I mean, that's just crazy. The ones that go through it, what I call gracefully, will slowly decrease their cycles until they go to no cycle. They'll skip one. Then all of a sudden, they'll skip 2 to 3 months. They may have another cycle, then they skip 4 to 6 months. Then all of a sudden, they don't have a cycle and they don't remember when they had the last one.
That's what happened to me.
Love it. Love it. And so that's really my graceful patient. And those wonderful patients come in and they'll say, you know what? I haven't had a cycle. I haven't had a cycle and it's been a year. And then we start talking about how do you feel since you don't have those cycles? The hormonal changes, the drop in your hormone levels can make you feel horrible for some women. Some women have what we call flushing. Just all of a sudden, they'll feel heat and they'll feel just like they've got to rip their clothes off.
Hot flash. You called it flushing. What is that? Why is that called flushing?
That's a medical term that we use, but it is the hot flash.
Okay.
And
call a warm moment.
Some women will have decreased libido. Their sex drive just drops. Women don't make but a small amount of testosterone anyway. So changes in that level really can affect them tremendously. They will lose the desire to have intercourse, the desire to snuggle up with their significant other, and it's simply because those hormones have changed. Some women, oh, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
I was saying, oh, wow, because when you said that, I'm picturing couples, married couples, and, a woman going through the change, and also when you said, it's changing, I just realized growing up, I'll always hear people say, she's going through the change. And you just made it make sense. Now I understand what they were talking about. But I was just thinking about married couples. If a wife is experiencing that, like it's not really, something she can help. You know what I mean? Like the husband might think, she's just pushing away, but it's her body. So what does she need to do? Because I don't know, that's kind of scary.
Well, it is. And the thing to remember is men don't know what you're going through, and they don't have those changes. So it may be hard to talk about. It may be difficult to discuss with your husband, but because they don't understand that hormonal change. But you think about men that go through the life change where they buy the big race sports car, or now all of a sudden they're looking for a younger woman, or things like that. That's the first things that came to my mind. I'm sorry, but
No, you're right.
they don't see it the same. What we have to do is I have an open and honest discussion with the patient about what we can offer. And usually it means adding hormones back into their body so that they can gradually transition through the change. The hormones that your body made are dropping sharply in the first couple of years of menopause. So you experience other things like vaginal dryness. We talked about decreased libido. You also experience mood swings, and it can be very hard. You may not even realize you're going through it, but your family does. And so you're just not as, your hormones aren't stable. They're going up and down, up and down. And so your mood is doing the same thing. And that can be hard on you. Sometimes women can use natural remedies, and they will try some of the over the counter medications first. The thing is, you always want to discuss these, even these over the counter medications with your physician, because the hormones that they will change may not be all of the hormones you need to protect your lining. And if you don't, you can develop a cancer in the uterus from too much exogenous or an outside source of estrogen. We have in over the counter medications, phytoestrogens or plant-based estrogens. Now, it's over the counter, so a lot of women think it's okay. Those are still estrogen. So your body is making and using it the same. You do need to protect that lining with progesterone. So you have to balance it so that it doesn't run away into something that could lead to cancer. And that's really important.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One, how can the men in our lives be more supportive? Like when women are experiencing, the change or those changes, how can they be more supportive? And also, after you answer that, what can women do about the dryness? Is there anything they can do naturally, about the dryness? We can talk about it. We can get with the men first, and then we'll talk about the dryness. Because I'm sure they want to know about it.
Great questions. Now, with men, the biggest thing they have to understand is we don't always recognize everything for what it is. We may not know that we're going through mood shifts. Being open and honest, just like when we have our spiritual retreats and we sit down together and we talk to each other and we are open about how we feel and what things drive or negate me being more cozy with you. For instance, women are so stressed by all the different things we get pulled from that at the end of the day, you want to sit down, flop down, and just take a breath. Because you already know there are going to be a million things just running through your head, even when you sit down to take that break. The mood swings come from stressors as well. And if men can be more supportive, more, honey, I understand. Is there anything I can do? Can I rub your feet? Oh, that I wish I could write a prescription for massage, sitting down and just talking. It's so important because we don't get to do that enough. And although men don't want to share so much, even if you give us just a few minutes, it really helps to decompress. And part of the mood swings are everything we're doing on top of our hormones changing and changing and changing.
Mhm.
And so the touch, when your significant other is touching your feet, is rubbing your shoulders, when you're just sitting together, touch is so integral in soothing and in,
The intimacy,
oh, I'm sorry,
the intimacy,
exactly.
all the things that you're naming, the intimacy. And it takes me back to what I said at the beginning of the other show, that the women are doing so much for so many people. They're neglecting themselves and no one is taking care of them. So it goes to everything that you're saying. They need that attention. And maybe if they got more of that attention, all of this stuff that you're naming, maybe they'll, be in better moods, and maybe they'll be in the mood. But continue. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Continue.
Oh, no, no, this is wonderful. Um,
Mhm.
I feel like women in general do not, like we discussed at the last episode, do not get or make that opportunity to do for themselves.
Mhm.
So, um, having your spa day or your spa time once a
Mhm.
week is important. You've got to nurture yourself because it starts with self love. Um, it's a process. And
Mhm.
once you start doing it, and it's just like exercise, you feel better and you want to do more of the things that make you feel better. You can incorporate your significant other in these things too,
Mhm.
and enjoy them together.
Mhm. So, what can they do about dryness?
Ah, now dryness is again lack of those hormones on that tissue. So
Mhm.
non-hormonal options are things like there are medications that you can buy online. One in particular that I particularly like is Reverie. That
Mhm.
particular medication is hyaluronic acid. Now, that is also in skin moisturizers. It helps
Mhm.
to plump the tissue, it helps to soothe that tissue. And so, over time, that actual acid actually helps build that tissue up. So, that's a wonderful medication. Um, I tell my women often olive oil, extra virgin olive oil is okay. It's got great slip. It's usually in our cabinets. It is that's the right oil.
Mhm.
Coconut oil, the extra virgin coconut oil. The one thing I have never been able to find is, would this affect condoms? One young patient asked me, how would this affect the condoms? And I don't have studies that tell me about the integrity of the condom with these particular oils. Now, there are also lubricants that are over the counter. Um, oh, the name of that big one just slipped my mind, but they have
Elijah.
that's it. That's it. So now they have gotten into oils and they have really good slip um, and feel really good to the tissue. But you have to
Mhm.
use them each time. Those are
Mhm.
wonderful to try. Um, And you can be creative when you're using them. You don't have to say, hold on, baby, wait, 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 wait. But,
Right.
be creative with them. And then you have to, your partner has to know too that as you age, it takes time for that intimacy to build as you're
Mhm.
moving to intercourse, and so that it's
Mhm.
not painful because the tissue is drier. And so
Exactly.
hormonally we offer estrogen creams, estrogen tablets. There's even progesterone creams that you can put in the area. Those are not what we call systemic hormones. They act locally, directly on that tissue. So you don't get a lot of the systemic effect, you get almost none. And in doing so, you decrease that risk that women are worried about with breast cancers and cancers in general from added hormones in their systems.
And I've also heard mineral oil.
Yes,
Yeah, I heard that
absolutely.
mineral oil. I heard that it works and it lasts a long time.
Yes, and you say that the one thing you have patients have to remember is if they use any of these oils, they don't need to use that every day. That oil
Right.
stays around and it will not easily go away. So they're good.
Well, that's good. We like to look for, we like the medicines, but we like to look for some natural ways as well. But I like what you said about the oils. That is so, oh, Dr. Dabney, you have given us so much great information. We have got to have you back. Ah, my goodness. Okay, again, do you have any encouraging words for our superheroes, the women of the world?
I call all my women Wonder Woman. And that's what I
Yes.
pretend I'm going to dress up as every Halloween. And I look at that outfit and know I can't get in it. So they are Wonder Women. Just keep
Mhm.
doing what you're doing, but make sure you take time for you. I have had such
Mhm.
a ball talking to you today. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for being with us. And thank you for joining us again. Remember, a mother is one who does the work of many for free all day, every day. And we must take care of ourselves and look out for our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our great aunts, because there are people who are doing that and, they're neglecting their own health. We can step in and make sure they're taking care of themselves. So be that person to step in and take care of your mom, your aunt, your sister, your cousin, your friend. And also, mothers, women, we love you. We appreciate you. We need you. Always remember, if you have health, you have hope. And if you have hope, you have everything. Don't lose hope. See you next time.